So, to start off with, a couple of years ago, 2004 exactly, I was taking a CMP information session, not unlike this one. And while I was at that session, I was, my inner dialogue was going, do I really belong here? And so if you're going through that right now, let me alleviate your concerns. So we typically have three types of people who attend this session. The first two are folks who are interested in learning more about the CMP program. The second group of people who are about to fill out the CMP application. And then the third group of people are people who have already been accepted into the CMP program, and they're interested in learning about how to prepare for the exam. So if you fit into one of those categories, you are absolutely in the right place, and stay with me through the hour. It will be worth your time. Before we get started, the last thing I want to go over is that when the session is done, I'm going to send you an email with all of the links and all of the dates and all of the things that we discuss. So much more important for me, for you guys to be interactive with me than for you guys to be taking notes. So in order to do that, we need to know a few things, right? Today's agenda is all within the hour. We're going to do some very, very quick online class housekeeping. We'll talk about the benefits and the history of the CMP designation. And then we'll get into the heart of the matter, the CMP process and how to prepare for the exam. All with an idea that by the end of the hour, you're going to have a personalized CMP action plan for yourself. That you should take notes on. And then, of course, we'll have discussion and questions throughout. So we have to know how to be able to do that. So let's do that quick housekeeping. So you'll notice that there is, you have a kind of, what should we call it? A control panel, right? And there are ellipses, right? Those are the three dots. That's an ellipse. And if you click on that, you'll see that the chat window, right? You can bring up your chat window. And so I'd like it if each of you did that, and you can say something like, hey, Ellen, or I found my chat window, or whatever you want to say, just so that I know that you can communicate with me. So Dana already found hers. That's great. So that is Shara and Ariel and Andrea. I don't know which one it is. So very good. Thank you. I appreciate you doing that, and I'm assuming everybody else can hear and find it. So please do go ahead and ask questions as I'm speaking. A lot of people think that that's rude. Me, I think that that's efficient. So please do that. Okay, so now that we found our chat windows, the next step is we're going to do some quick introductions. So this is what I want to know about you. Okay, are you a supplier or a planner? Okay, what kind of company do you work for? And really the most important issue is, why are you interested in earning your CMP? So while you type that answer into the chat window, I'll introduce myself quickly. My name is Ellen Mayara. I earned my CMP in 2005. I am an independent planner, and I own my own company in Tampa, Florida. I've worked in a variety of situations within our industry, including being on the supplier side as a destination management company. Okay. So the reason why I wanted to earn my CMP back in 2004 was that I felt like my career needed a jump start. I didn't know what I needed to do. I felt like I had plateaued. And so I went to the information session kind of half-heartedly. In fact, I think I went through the whole process half-heartedly, not really convinced that it was the thing that would make a difference for my career. and I was wrong. And it clearly, as I sit here today, I must have had some kind of conversion. And I can tell you that I did. I gained so much more than I expected. We all come to this experience with really strong points, things that we have a lot of experience with and we're very comfortable with. And then there are those things that are our weak points. And so we do get to fill in those gaps. We do think of the CMP as being a very singular effort. So it's surprising that that second bullet point for me would be fantastic network. And I did build that, and it still surprises me, but nonetheless, it happens. The third point is that I experienced an increase in earnings, and I absolutely did, and we'll talk about more about that in a few slides. But the thing that I really value the most and surprises me the most is a sense of confidence that it gave me. Ultimately, right, building enough confidence so that I could go out on my own and start my own business. So that's just a little bit about me, and I'm just going to quickly scroll through some of your comments so that I know who you are. We have a planner, marketing and technology company, a planner, corporation. You want your CMP on your title to enhance your career. In-house planner for electric wholesale supply company. Planner working for a technology company. Want to further your career. Planner, business tech events. Earning a CMP to boost your independent contractor credentials. Very good. Company offered to pay for CMP designation. Okay, well, that's very good, but hopefully there's more of a reason that you want to do it. Planner, looking to improve your career. Planner recently switched to supplier. Very interesting. Okay, so mostly planners, but we do have our good supplier in there, so good. I like to see that, and that gives me a really good idea about who you are. So we're going to start at the beginning. And the very beginning is the organization that owns and administers the CMP program. And that organization is the Convention Industry Council. Sometimes we call it the CIC. There are a whole lot of acronyms throughout this process. I'm going to try to stay away from them as much as possible. So the Convention Industry Council is an interesting organization. I say that it's interesting because its members aren't people like you and me. Instead, its members are other organizations. So there are 33 members of the Convention Industry Council, and they're all international meetings, conventions, and exhibition industry organizations like MPI and PCMA. And I'm like looking through it, and ASAE, right? I told you there were a lot of acronyms, right? And we could go through, there are indeed 33 member organizations. Okay, so the Convention Industry Council's purpose is to develop programs that promote professionalism within the industry. And certainly the CMP program fits within that description. So the designation began in 1985, and it does stand for Certified Meeting Professional. A lot of people think the P stands for planner, but it does stand for professional. About a third of our current CMPs are suppliers, right? People who are hoteliers and DMCs and transportation companies and production companies, etc., right? We do have more than 11,000 CMPs internationally, so it's still a very elite group. And there are CMPs in 55 countries. So this is absolutely an international certification. More on that later. So the goals of the CMP program are laid out very carefully, and it's really to our benefit. And really the most important bullet point here is going to be the first one, that the CIC has identified a body of knowledge for us. They've said, this is what you need to know. That body of knowledge is called the CMP International Standards. Sometimes you'll see CMPIS. Okay, so the CMP International Standards is a 63-page outline that describes exactly what you need to know and understand in order to be successful on the exam. Now, that's really good news for us, because when you think about your exam experiences in the past, right, you have always taken an exam that was associated with a class. And so you knew what was going to be covered on the exam because it would be the content that you covered in the class. Well, because there's no class associated with the CMP, right, there's no way to know what would be on the exam other than this body of knowledge. So we're going to look at the body of knowledge a little bit later. Now, so they said, this is what you need to know. The second bullet point says, and you need to know a certain amount of that knowledge. Okay, and they define how much of that knowledge that you need to know in order to be considered certified. Now, as I said, we all learn something through this process. As we learn something, right, we're going to be advancing the art and science of meeting management, right? I talked about building a network, right? And as I said, it's an odd thing to think about, but there are unique networking opportunities available once you become a CMP. And you're invited to them because you have a CMP. As we learn more, our value becomes, we increase in value, let's say, right? And of course, as we learn more, we get better at what we do, which raises industry standards, practices, and ethics. So benefits, we really have talked about a lot of this already. I've talked about the idea of learning more and professional development, and it seems like a lot of you are looking for that, right, to advance your career. I spoke about earning more after earning my CMP. The PCMA annual salary survey says that CMPs earn $10,500 more annually than their non-CMP counterparts. So over the course of your career, that's a whole lot of money to consider. I spoke a little bit about personal achievement and increased knowledge. We haven't so much talked about credibility. So I'm going to ask you a question. Now's the time again to put your hands on your keyboards. When you meet a CMP, or perhaps even today when I said, hi, I'm Ellen, I'm a CMP, is there something that you know about them, something that you can assume about them? So you can type that right in to the chat window. Again, if as you meet a new person who happens to have a CMP, what is it that you know about them because of that CMP? You understand that they're professional and serious about their role. I love that answer, Shara. I hope I'm saying that right. That's a really great answer. It's actually what I think of too. That here's somebody who has made a big investment in themselves, and they have therefore been, kind of declared they're serious about their career in this industry. And so I want to work with somebody who is a professional in this industry. So that's somebody I want to work with. Okay. So we talked about the certification being a globally recognized certification. And I can share with you that I trained the first 2 CMPs in Australia. I've trained CMPs in Beijing, in Shanghai, in Ho Chi Minh City. I've trained folks in India, in Dubai, all over Europe, and of course, North and South America. So I can assure you that the CMP is globally recognized. Of course, and some of you guys mentioned this, of course, you get to use the CMP designation. And that's very important. It's not only important for people who are in the industry and familiar with the CMP, but it's also important for people who are not in the industry who may ask you, what's a CMP? And this gives you an opportunity now to be an ambassador for the industry and explain what the CMP is and show that there's a lot of value that our industry brings both to our economy and to business in general. So of course, you're going to have the opportunity to network at CMP only programs, and you're listed in the CMP directory. So on to the heart of the matter, right? This is what everybody wants. Dana, I don't want to skip over your comments because they look nice. Dana said the first thing she can think of is that the CMP is a mentor, at least to you. Well, someday very soon you'll be a mentor to someone else then. Also, perhaps they are a recent CMP or they've been one for decades. They have a level of experience that you can learn from. And likewise, people will feel the same way about you, and it's just a few months away. I know that seems crazy. Okay, so the CMP process is 4 steps. We're going to look at each one of these in depth. Okay, the first is to apply to the program. Once you've done that, you'll hear back from the Convention Industry Council in a few weeks, and they'll say, congratulations, you are now a CMP candidate, and you now have 1 year in which to take your exam. So you have a year of eligibility. Within that year of eligibility, then your next step is going to be to register for the exam. So the exam itself is offered quarterly, and each quarter over a 10-day testing period. So this step, registering for the exam, means you're going to commit to one of the quarters. So the quarters are always January, May, August, and November. And again, it's 10 days in those months. So on this step, you're going to be committing to one of those time frames. The next step then is to choose the location, date, and time for your exam. So you will be taking the exam in a secure testing facility, and you get to choose where that is, the date, and the time. There are many, many testing facilities, more than 400 of them, and so it's likely that there is one that is either in your city or close to where you are. And then, of course, the last step is to sit for the exam. So let's look at the application process. Now, it's very straightforward, the application. In fact, it's so straightforward that you could be going through it and then suddenly mostly you hit a point and you go, gee, I wonder if I'm doing this correct. And so my advice to you is to actually read the CMP handbook, which is where all the instructions are. So read that before you actually start filling it out. Now, the current handbook is dated 2017, and there have been a few changes. So I would recommend, if you've read the handbook previously, to go back and read the new handbook. And I'm going to send you a link to that. It's a PDF that you can download. So you'll have that from me today. So the process is actually all done online. And if you have been following this process, you'll know in the past there were all these deadlines, and there are no more deadlines. So there's no application, registration, or scheduling deadlines anymore. Okay, so you can create and submit your application online at any time. You can track your continuing education activities within your, well, I have to go back, I guess. Because it's an online submission, what you do is you go to the Convention Industry Council's website, which is conventionindustry.org, and you create an account for yourself. Okay, within that account, that's how you start your application. Okay, so once you have that account, you can start your application, you can track your continuing education activities, and you can upload any supporting documentation that you have for your application. So that is kind of your hub of activity. Now, within your eligibility year, you can submit your exam fee at any time, and you can schedule your exam for any testing, available testing window at any time. Okay, so the application itself is in 2 parts, and the whole purpose of the application is for you to demonstrate that you are ready to sit for the exam. So they're going to look for that in 2 areas. The first section is in professional experience, and the second section is continuing education and internships. So in each one of these sections, there's going to be 1 requirement for you to meet. Okay, so that's 1 requirement in professional experience and 1 requirement in continuing education and internships. Luckily, the CIC has given us a couple of ways to meet the requirements. So you only need to meet 1 of these. Okay, so in section 1, professional experience, most of us fit into the option 1 category. Okay, so option 1 is that you have worked for 3 years in a full-time position in the meetings industry in a position where you have responsibilities. Okay, so again, most of us either have that or are working toward it, right? Because there could be some people on the call who are not yet ready, right? But are working their way toward it. So that could be a possibility. Fewer people meet the requirement of option 2. Option 2 is real similar to option 1. It has less requirement of time. So now we're looking at 2 years of full-time experience, but you must have a completed degree in hospitality. Okay, and then option 3 is 3 years as a full-time instructor in the hospitality field in an educational institution. And in all the years that I've been doing this, I've had that come up once. So it's likely we're either an option 1 or an option 2. So on your keyboard in the chat window, let me know if you're an option 1 or an option 2. Okay, and as you do that, I am going to move ahead. So, we usually are an option 1 or working toward option 1. That's the most common. Okay, so this is the information that they're going to ask of you on the application. Of course, it'll look a little different because it's an online form now. So they'll ask you your job title. You're going to make it, Dana, not to worry, right? So they're going to ask your job title, the name of your organization, and what type of company it is. And you guys already did that for me, right? I work for a corporation that does this, right? And you're going to fill in your employment dates, okay? And you're going to convert that to number of months because they want to see that either it is more than 36 months or 36 months or more, or that combining various jobs, right, that it totals more than 36 months. So that's one thing that I can say is if you have more than 1 position that you need to claim, right, there's going to be a little button on the bottom. It's going to say add more. So you'll get another block of this information and you'll be able to add more. Okay, so the thing that they want to see under job description or duties is they really want to see a detailed description of what it is that you do. So, and it's important that the description indicates that what you do are tasks that relate to the meetings industry, right? That the majority of your time is spent doing that. Okay, often people ask me at this point, well, Ellen, does it matter if my title says I'm a marketing manager, or I'm an administrative assistant, or I'm a PR representative, or I'm a sales manager? They don't care about your title. They really are going to spend a whole lot of time paying attention to what your job description says. So make sure that your job description indicates that you are a meeting professional. The only other thing you have to do for section 1 is attach a current resume. So make sure that the resume is up to date. In other words, it includes your current position. Some people forget they have to do that, right? And make sure it matches what you're claiming on the application, right? That's a very important thing. That would be a red flag to me if I were reviewing applications, which I don't do. So, because I don't know what they're looking for. But I would certainly go, well, there's something wrong here, right? Okay, so that's section 1, and that's pretty straightforward and easy. So let's look at section 2. So section 2 is internships and continuing education. Now, most of us fit into option 2, or we're working toward it. Okay, and option 2 says that you have accumulated 25 clock hours of continuing education in the past 5 years in the meetings industry. Now, a lot of people are going to go, oh, forget it. I don't have it. How am I going to do that? There's no way, right? Don't give up. Before we're done, I'm going to show you a real easy way to do this. Okay, so stick with me if you don't have it. If you have it, fantastic. Okay, well, let's just look at option 1. I would say about 10% of the time, I have somebody who fits into this category. Option 1 is that you have completed an industry internship of 200 hours or more, right? And the internship was administered by an academic institution. Okay. So let's say, are we option 1s or option 2s? Oh, we have an option 1. Yay! Okay, so we're going to look at the option 1 slide, right? That this is claiming your industry internship. Okay, so you will put the title of the internship program, what the focus was, what organization you interned for, and then the name of the educational institution, right? Their address and your faculty advisor's information, right? Then your dates, and you're going to have to attach documentation regarding your internship. Okay, and there are details about that in the CMP handbook, so you should absolutely look at that. Okay, but most of us, right, said that we were going to have 25 clock hours of continuing education. Okay, so this is the information they're going to look for each session that you're going to claim. So let's say we took a course in managing a budget. Okay, maybe it was at a local community college. So session course or title, managing a budget. We're going to skip over line 2 and come back to it in 2 slides. Okay, put the community college's name as program sponsor provider, location wherever you are from, right? The date of the class and the number of hours that you took for that class. So I have some good news for you, especially for those of you who are trying to rack up your 25 hours. By attending this session, you are earning 1 hour of continuing education. And so for this session, you would put CMP information session, the program sponsor providers, event solutions management. The CIC does know me because we are a preferred provider of continuing education for the CMP program. So they have looked over and approved the education that we provide. Location is online, today's date, and you're earning 1 clock hour. So now you only need 24 clock hours. Hopefully that's good for you. So again, it's likely that you're going to need to submit more than one of these, right? And so there'll be a button that you'll be able to push to add more, right? So this is fairly easy. This is where it gets a little bit more difficult, okay? But not so terrible. For the continuing education that you are claiming on the application, you need to provide documentation that you attended. Okay, so that means you can use an invoice, a canceled check, a diploma, a certificate of completion, a course description, an on-site program, a course handout. Today, I'm going to send you an email that says, thanks for attending the CMP information session on this date for 1 hour, right? Going to give you all the information that you need to apply into your application, okay? Um, so one of the things to remember is, remember we talked about 33 members of the Convention Industry Council? So those 33 member organizations all know that you guys need proof of attendance. So let's say you took something, you were at a WEC conference 3 years ago and you took a course, and you need proof and you don't have it. Call Meeting Professionals International. They're going to be able to help you get that proof. They're involved in the Convention Industry Council. It's, they understand the process. So they will be able to help you. Don't be afraid to go back and ask somebody, or I should say some organization, to provide that proof for you. Okay, so we did skip a line on the application, and if you remember, the application line said CMPIS. Now remember when we were talking about the body of knowledge, we said it was called the CMP International Standards. And this is the first time where, in the process, where you're going to want to use the CMPIS. So we're going to take a quick look at it, okay? So the CMPIS is a 63-page outline. It's a PDF, and I'm going to send you a link to it today. You can download it. Hopefully you won't print it all out, and you'll use it electronically. Just the green in me is coming out. So it's kind of important to understand how this document comes about. CMPs from all over the world are invited to attend a meeting, both suppliers and planners. And the agenda of that meeting consists of one question. And that question is, what knowledge do you need to have to be successful at your job? So likely this great big long list is already starting to, pile up in your brain, right? It's a pretty big conversation to have. From that conversation, this outline is distilled, okay? And we're going to start by looking at the table of contents, because really for the purpose of your application, I think probably this is as far as you're going to have to delve into the CMPIS. So this is only half of the table of contents. I couldn't fit it all on one page, so you could actually read it. So let's think about the two examples that we used when we were filling out the application together. The first class I said was called Managing a Budget. And if we go through this table of contents, we can see that domain D has to do with financial management. Right, so managing a budget is going to fit into that. On the application, you're going to click on a pull-down menu. It's going to list all the domains. You'll choose domain D, financial management, and that's it. It's that easy. Don't make it more difficult for yourself than it has to be, okay? Now, for the class that you're taking with me today, it falls under domain A, strategic planning, and so you can absolutely choose that, okay, just so that you know that there is yet a second page of the table of contents. There it is. And then it's worthwhile we're here looking at kind of what the actual content of the CMPIS looks like. So this is the first half page of the document. And we can see very clearly, right, that the outline is broken up into domains, skills, and sub-skills. And again, if you know these things and understand how to do it, right, you're going to be successful on the exam. So that's very helpful, right? So now we know what we need to learn or understand to be successful. But it actually is an even better tool than that. Because what it's telling us is that domain A, which is strategic planning, is 10% of the exam. So 10% of the 165 questions comes out to, well, it's for a variety of reasons, it comes out to 15 questions. It's not really 10% of 165, it's 10% of 150 questions. There's a reason why there's another 15 questions. So domain A is 15 questions, and it drills down even further for you. by telling you that skill 1 is going to be 3 to 5 questions. So as you look at this, right, and you're going over this, it really is a description of exactly what is going to be on the exam and also how much is going to be on the exam. So it's a very cool document. And again, I'm going to send you a link for that. So here's the deal. What I'm about to say is going to sound really funny. If you don't meet the requirement in section 1 of the application, or in section 2 of the application, don't apply. There are a number of people who think, oh, for me, I'll squeak by. This is not an organization that lets you squeak by. Okay, so if you don't really have it and don't really have the proof, wait until you have it. Okay, so I mean, it seems really simple, but there are people all the time who for whatever reason, they're excited. I'll get through it. No, really, it's not a subjective process. Either you have it or you don't. Okay, so don't apply if you don't have it. Just wait until you earn it. So that being said, everybody who actually submits their application, right, will be accepted into the program. So I say this because the minute after you hit submit and send your application in, you should immediately purchase your study materials. Do not wait. It takes a little time to get your study materials, and you need to start studying. Okay? So absolutely do that. Now, one of the domains in the CMP International Standards is about project management. And what you're doing, right, the CMP program is a project. It's a personal project for yourself now. Right? And so we're going to use some project management terms to discuss, right, what we're going to do. So on our critical path, right, you're going to submit your application. The next step is going to be to purchase your study materials, and we're going to talk about what they are. The next step, I would say, would be to join a study group. Okay, and we'll talk about why in a few slides. The study group that I lead is going to start May 2nd at 8 p.m. Eastern. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit at the end of the hour. So the next step on your critical path, we said, was to register to take the exam. Remember, we said that was committing to one of the time frames, January, May, August, or November. Now, at this same point on your critical path, if you speak English as a second language, you can request additional time for your exam. And I'll refer you to the CMP handbook about how to do that. Likewise, if you have a disability, including a learning disability, you can request an accommodation be made when you take the exam. And this is the point on your critical path where you would want to do that. And I'll refer you to the CMP handbook about those details. Okay, we said once we commit to a time frame, we have to schedule our appointment for our exam. So appointments are scheduled on a first-come, first-served basis. So if there's a location, day, and time that you have to take the exam, do it earlier rather than later. Okay, and here are remaining 2017 and 2018 exam dates. Can't believe we're talking about 2018. Okay, so on to study materials. It's 2 manuals and a glossary. So the first manual is the Convention Industry Council's manual. It's the 9th edition, which is available both in print and ebook version. Both work fine. The next item is a glossary. It's called the Accepted Practices Exchange Glossary. Sometimes you'll hear people say Apex Glossary. The glossary, you have 2 options. You can certainly purchase it in print, but there's also an available, start again, Ellen. There's also a version available online, free for you to use. So I'm not sure it's so necessary to buy a printed version. I haven't purchased one in a number of years because I just use the one that's online. And then the second manual is published by PCMA. It's called Professional Meeting Management, sometimes called the PMM because it's this great big long title. And that one is the 6th edition. So if you're borrowing study materials, and that absolutely is possible, just make sure you're working from the correct editions. I also have had students just through social networking, but also on eBay, I've had students who have picked up used versions as well. So that certainly is a possibility. Of course, you can purchase them, and I'm going to send you a link to do that through the Convention Industry Council. Okay, on to the exam. The exam is 3.5 hours. There are 165 multiple choice questions. There are no fill in the blank or true or false questions and no essay. Each question has 4 plausible answers in the form of A, B, C, or D. And it's never A and D, B and C, all of the above. Never, that will never happen. It will always be 4 plausible options. The questions themselves are situational. They're not rote, which means it's not enough to sit down and memorize what's in the manuals. Each question puts a meeting professional in a particular situation. It's described, and then they're asking for the best correct answer given the 4 options that you're provided with. So you'll notice I said the best correct answer because there may be more than one correct answer, but there will be one that will be better than the rest. And that's what makes the exam difficult. So as I said earlier, the exam is offered in secure testing facilities, and you will be taking the exam on a computer. Okay, each exam is comprised of a new selection of questions from the CMP item bank. The item bank is just a database of test questions that have been written by CMPs at one of those CMP-only events called the CMP Conclave. I've been fortunate enough to write questions on the exam on 7 different occasions. And so let me explain to you how this happens. The CMPs are in a ballroom, and we're sitting at banquet tables. And in the middle of the banquet tables are the 2 manuals, the CIC 9th, the PMM 6th, and the glossary. Okay, all 3 items are there. Staff members from the Convention Industry Council are walking around the ballroom, and to each table they say, you write questions on food and beverage, you write questions on managing a budget, you write questions on event specification guides, whatever. And so with that, I put my hand into the middle of the table and I pick up the nearest manual, okay? And I write the question from that manual, okay? And on the question form that I'm given, I have to give them the page, the manual, the page number, okay? Then I hand my question to my neighbor and I ask them to review it. We may discuss it, right? We may have to make some edits. Once we're both satisfied with the question, we both sign off on the question, and then that question gets reviewed by the CMP Board of Directors Exam Committee, a third-party testing agency, and they get vetted and thoroughly edited by the time they hit the exam for you. Okay, so the reason why I tell you this is there are a couple of reasons. The first is no question happens on the exam without it being sourced out of the manual. So you know if you study the manuals, right, you're going to be studying the right material. That's the first thing. The second thing is some point during your process, somebody is going to say to you, oh, you only need to read this manual. That manual is not so important. That person is not doing you any favors. Okay, I personally have written questions out of both manuals, and I will tell you that the manuals are different. So you've got to read both. Don't let that person send you astray, okay? So questions measure both your competency and skill. And as you can imagine, writing and reviewing questions is an ongoing process to keep the exam current, okay? Exam results are reported as either a pass or a fail. And on the day of the exam, you will get an unofficial result, which will be confirmed 6 to 8 weeks later. Okay? So when you finish up the exam, the Convention Industry Council collects a whole lot of information about who you are and how you prepared for the exam. And one of the things that they tell us is that statistically, those who pass the, statistically, those who prepare for the exam by being in a CMP study group score better on the exam than those who do not. So if you take anything away from our session today, I want you to be a part of a CMP study group. Whether it's the study group that I lead online or another one that's out there, be a part of a study group. It gives you a leg up, okay? Now, that being said, and this is specifically to those who need to earn CMP continuing education credits, the CMP study group that I lead is considered a CIC preferred provider of continuing education. So that means you can use my study group to gain your continuing education hours so that you can fill out your application. So for the people who don't have their 25 hours of continuing education, this is what happens. You join the study group. Just like the CIC gives you a year to take the exam, anybody who joins my study group can be in my study group for a year. Now, I offer the study group 4 times during the year, quarterly. It matches the CIC's schedule for the exam. So you could literally, if you wanted to, sit in my study group 4 times and not have to pay again. Okay, so people who need their continuing education credits take the study group. They earn the hours, then they apply for their exam, and then they can sit through the study group a second time at no additional charge, right? And then they sit for their exam and they pass. Okay, anybody who has done that, and I don't know, we probably have more than 50 people who have done just that at this point. Everybody who has done that has been successful. So, okay, that's kind of the side note for those of you who needed that. Ariel asks, can the unofficial fail pass differ from the official results? It's not a sliding scale, so we can get rid of that idea. But yes, and this is the reason why. And I've only heard this happen in all these years that I've been doing this, and it's coming on 13 years that I've been doing this. I've only heard of this happening once, and it was somebody who failed on the day of, right? That was their unofficial results. And then when it came out later, the results came out later because they had tossed a question, because it turned out that that question was not a fair question. She actually then passed. So yes, anecdotally, I have heard that, but it went in a good way, not in a bad way. Really, the whole official and unofficial thing is that the CMP audits the whole process very carefully because they take the security of the exam very, very seriously. I can't stress that enough. To the point where they limit the jewelry that you're allowed to wear when you take the exam and all kinds of crazy things. So, but that's something for later. Is there a time limit to use continuing education hours? Yeah, it's within the past 5 years. 25 clock hours within the past 5 years. Are there any sample exams you can take before sitting for the official exam? Dana, I'm going to answer that later, okay? We'll hang on to that question. Remind me. Is that okay? Okay, so for the study group that I lead, the goals of the group are to study the content that's on the CMP International Standards, right? To understand how the exam is written. Of course, I want everybody to have confidence on the day of the exam. So this is the slide I need to change. I knew that I could not find it. There is a slide I need to change. I have to remember to do that. Okay, we're going to use 3 online tools. Really now it's 2 online tools, and any meeting is not it because, right, we're using a Zoom meeting today. So I've changed over to Zoom meetings for the live study sessions. We do use an online classroom environment, and within that classroom environment, there's a quiz program that we use. So, and this is why I wanted to wait to answer the quiz question. In my study group, you get a weekly quiz of 10 questions, you get a midterm of 165 questions, and 3 finals of 165 practice questions. So that sort of answers your question, and I'm going to come back to it at the very, very end, Dana, one more time. So the study group itself is 15 sessions. Each session is 2 hours. So when you're done with the CMP study group, you have 30 hours of continuing education that you can use on your application if you need them. Again, the first session is May 2nd. Each session we review quiz questions, we talk about the material for the week, and we talk about how questions are assembled. I think it's really important. I think the questions have hints in them. If you're a poker player, we'll say a tell. And so we talk a lot about trying to locate the tell or the hint that helps you find the answer. So we break the 15 weeks up into 12 weeks of content, and typically your like homework would be a reading assignment of about 120 pages, vocabulary note cards, and you'll have a weekly practice quiz. And then the last 3 sessions are sessions that are review sessions, and really the study group itself dictates what we do. But we do use worksheets, and then there are those practice finals to use as well, both to build stamina and develop good test-taking habits. So the study group is $350 for the 30 hours of training. We do have a 98% success rate. So that means compared to what the CIC says the average is, they say that the average person has a 70 to 75% chance of being successful on the exam. So we absolutely have raised that up a great deal. Other advantages to the study group I lead is you can access the sessions in the classroom environment from anywhere, as long as you have internet access. And also if you're unable to make a session, every session is recorded. So you can go back and listen if you missed it, but also if you go, gee, I forget what Ellen said about marketing, you know, you could go back and listen to that whole recording if you wanted to. So I promised that we would, at the end, have a CMP action plan, right? So start thinking about your questions and typing them as I talk about your action plan. So if you're not ready, in other words, if you don't meet the requirements for the application, right? In section 1, Dana, right? We're just going to stay employed, right? Those 18 months are going to go by really quickly, especially if you're doing meetings and events, right? In section 2, if you don't meet the requirement, well, now you have a way of meeting the requirement by being a part of the study group, and at the same time, you're also preparing for the exam. So it's a good use of your time. If you do meet those requirements, the first thing to do is clearly to read the email I'm going to send you, right? And then read the CMP handbook, fill out your application, submit it, right? Purchase your study materials, join a study group, schedule your exam, right? And sit for the exam, right? Very, very easy. Piece of cake. Any questions? You guys are really quiet. Ooh, while you're thinking, I'm going to finish answering Dana's question. Dana, the CMP offers practice tests, practice questions. You can buy them either as 20 questions or as 40 questions. They're pretty pricey. They come out to like $1 a question. The good thing about them is they are retired questions. So they actually at one time appeared on the exam. So you're really seeing exactly, questions that were one-time real questions. So there's a good thing about that. But it is a pretty pricey thing only for that limited number of questions. That being said, this issue of questions, of sample questions, even the questions that I give, is a very controversial one. There are tons of, I will tell you, there are tons of sample questions floating out there on the internet. I would warn you about them. You don't know, first, if they're correct. Second, you don't know if they're related to which version of which manual. And when I tell you that the manuals change radically between editions, I'm not kidding. So now I offer questions to my students, but it's only because they can come back to me and say, I don't understand this. Okay? And then we can talk through it. And then I ask them not to put the questions out to the world, because it doesn't help anybody if you don't have somebody to go to. So I would really caution you about using just those questions that are hanging out there. You just don't know. You could be studying something and it could be wrong. So really be very careful. The questions that I give to my students have all been vetted, and every time we have a manual change, I go through the manual and resource every single question, and it's more than 1,000 questions that you get from me. So be really careful about using that kind of stuff. Shara, are the books that are used for the study group the same books that need to be purchased? Absolutely. It would be silly if those weren't the same ones, right? We're absolutely going to read out of exactly what you need to read to be successful on the exam. Wouldn't do it any other way. We have 2 more minutes. If there are questions, let me just say to you, this is how you reach me. And I'm going to send this to you again in email, right? A lot of people think, oh, she's real busy. And yeah, I am. So I'll send her an email. And actually, I would rather you call me. I know that seems funny. But typically, if you have a question for me, I have 6 questions to ask you before I can answer you, right? And so by the time we have to do that, it takes a week for you to get your answer. If you call me, you'll get your answer in 5 minutes, right? And I would much rather spend 5 minutes than a week answering your questions. Andrea says, where do you recommend finding additional courses to take to secure 25 hours of continuing education? Are there a lot of online webinars, etc.? Well, I'll refer you to the CIC website for that, Andrea. There's a whole listing of people who, like me, are CMP, continuing education preferred providers. And so you'll find them there. Does that help? Great. Anything else? We got 1 minute. I don't like to take any more time than you guys have agreed to. Okay, so if you have questions, certainly please give me a phone call. I'm happy to chat with you. So much more than if you send me an email. So I'll be emailing you in just a few. I hope I have everybody's email address. It's my pleasure. This is my labor of love, Dana. So I love doing this. I love teaching. So, and I love folks in our industry. No, actually, this is the 1 hour that won't log automatically, Ariel. You're going to get an email from me, and you'll use that email as your proof of attendance. All the hours from the study group log, it's not so automatic. I actually have to upload all those hours. But yeah, those the study group hours log automatically. Great. I'm glad to have you, Shara. So please, please, please give me a call with any other questions. And all the information about how to register for the study group will be included in the email. It was my pleasure, everybody. Have a great evening. I'm going to sign out because it's past the hour. Thanks. Everybody, good luck with your CMP.